leave Nicki Minaj alone. Y'all be on this let a woman have her own choice. It's a woman's right to choose. It's her body, it's her mouth, it's her life, it's her choice. Then soon as Nicki Minaj choose them other folks that y'all don't like, y'all want to have a problem with her. Now, if them people do her wrong, if they get on her or don't give her what they promised her, whatever the case may be, as colored folks, we still got to be here to welcome her back home.
Nobody expected Karlissa to wake up and choose verbal warfare. But once trolls decided to drag Nicki Minaj as a hot mess, the internet found out real quick that Karlissa wasn't in the mood for respectful discourse. This wasn't a polite disagreement. This was a full-on clapback that landed like a drink thrown across a reality TV dinner table. 1 second it was trolls talking reckless behind keyboards. The next second Karlissa was lighting them up like they forgot screenshots. Live forever. And let's be clear, this wasn't just about Nicki Minaj. This was about internet audacity. The kind that thinks it can poke a celebrity-adjacent hornet's nest and walk away untouched. Karlissa didn't whisper. She didn't hint. She went straight for the jugular with the confidence of someone who's been watching trolls recycle. The same tired insults for years. The reaction was instant. Fans cheered, critics clutched pearls, memes spawned like rabbits. And suddenly a simple insult turned into a full-blown online spectacle that made the Kardashians look like they handle drama with customer service scripts. Buckle up, because once Karlissa started clapping back, the internet realized that this wasn't going to be a one-tweet moment. This was war. The internet thought it was just another day of reckless opinions flying around unchecked. Until someone decided to label Nicki Minaj a hot mess. Like that phrase doesn't come preloaded with disrespect. It was casual, lazy, and smug. The kind of insult people toss out when they think distance and anonymity will protect them from consequences. But this time, the words didn't disappear into the void. They landed squarely in Karlissa's line of sight, and once that happened, the tone of the entire conversation shifted. Karlissa doesn't do passive observation. She doesn't bookmark disrespect for later. When she sees something she considers out of pocket, she responds in real time with real energy and zero interest in being misunderstood. So when trolls decided to critique Nicki Minaj like they were unpaid judges on a talent show nobody asked them to host, Karlissa stepped in with the kind of clapback that doesn't ask for permission and doesn't apologize afterward. This wasn't a polite correction. It wasn't a soft rebuttal wrapped in PR language. It was blunt, sharp, and unapologetic, the verbal equivalent of slamming a door so hard the walls remember it. Karlissa didn't just defend Nicki. She called out the entire routine, the recycled insults, the selective outrage, the way confidence in women gets rebranded as chaos the moment it becomes inconvenient. The timing made it worse for the trolls. Nicki Minaj exists in a permanent spotlight where every move gets dissected like it's a Supreme Court decision. She's praised loudly, criticized louder, and constantly framed as too much by people who benefit from her impact while pretending they don't. Calling her a hot mess wasn't just shade. It was part of a pattern the internet refuses to retire. Karlissa saw that immediately, and she wasn't interested in letting it slide under the excuse of just an opinion. Screenshots of Karlissa's response started spreading almost instantly. Not because people were shocked she spoke up, but because of how she spoke up. The tone was fearless. The sarcasm was surgical. The message was clear. If you're going to talk reckless, be prepared for someone to respond with the same volume you started with. Fans reposted it with captions celebrating the energy. Critics accused her of going too far, and everyone else pretended they were above it while watching the numbers climb. Karlissa didn't defend Nicki like a stan. She defended her like someone who's exhausted by the internet's selective amnesia. The same people who praise authenticity suddenly panic when it shows up without a filter. The same people who demand women be outspoken are the first to call them unstable when they actually are. Karlissa dragged that contradiction into the light and let it sit there uncomfortably. The trolls tried to pivot fast. Some backtracked, claiming it was a joke. Others hid behind the phrase free speech like that somehow erases impact. A few doubled down, insisting Karlissa's reaction proved their point. That logic never holds up, but it circulates anyway because it allows people to insult loudly and critique reactions instead of taking responsibility for starting the fire. What made the exchange explode was how familiar it felt. This wasn't just about Nicki Minaj. This was about how women in the public eye are constantly policed for tone, volume, and confidence. Speak softly and you're weak. Speak loudly and you're unhinged. Karlissa didn't argue theory. She demonstrated reality. In real time, blogs jumped on the moment like it was free fuel. Headlines sharpened the situation into something louder, framing Karlissa's response as a meltdown instead of a rebuttal. Words like snaps, goes off, and erupts flooded timelines because nuance doesn't generate clicks. Screenshots were cropped, context was trimmed, the narrative was simplified for maximum engagement. Nicki Minaj's fans rallied instantly. To them, Karlissa wasn't just defending Nicki. She was defending the right to exist loudly without being labeled unstable. They pointed out how male artists rarely get tagged with the same language for the same behavior. Confidence becomes arrogance, success becomes chaos. And suddenly a woman standing her ground is framed as losing control. Critics shifted the conversation away from the original insult and toward Karlissa herself. They questioned why she felt the need to respond. They argued Nicki doesn't need defending. They pretended power makes criticism harmless. That argument fell apart quickly because criticism doesn't lose its sting just because the target is successful. Disrespect doesn't become acceptable just because it's familiar. The memes came next because once the internet senses conflict, it turns everything into content. Karlissa's words were clipped, remixed, and paired with reaction gifs. Some memes laughed with her, others laughed at her. Both sides contributed to the same result. The moment grew, the conversation widened, and the original insult got buried under the fallout it created. What irritated people most wasn't that Karlissa responded. It was that she didn't soften her response to make others comfortable. She didn't cushion her words or explain them twice. She said what she said and stood on it. That confidence rattles people who are used to women apologizing for their tone before their point gets heard. The discourse spiraled quickly. Suddenly, the debate wasn't about whether the insult was out of line, but about how women should respond to being disrespected. Should they ignore it, laugh it off, address it calmly? Or are they allowed to match energy without being labeled dramatic? Karlissa answered that question without asking permission. As the engagement climbed, so did the scrutiny. Every word she said got replayed. Every phrase got interpreted. Supporters praised her for saying what many people think but don't say. Critics accused her of fueling unnecessary drama. Neutral observers claimed they didn't care while actively participating in the comment sections. Behind the scenes, the ripple was already spreading. When clapbacks go viral, they don't just affect the people involved, they shift how others move. They remind trolls that words can come back with interest. They remind audiences that silence isn't the only option, and this was only the beginning, because once Karlissa drew that line in the sand, the internet wasn't going to let it end quietly. Trolls don't retreat easily, they regroup. Fans don't calm down quickly, they escalate. The insult may have started small, but the response cracked something open, and once that happens online, the story never stays where it started. It mutates, it grows, and it waits for the next spark to push it even further. Once Karlissa's response started circulating, the internet did what it always does when it smells conflict. It stopped listening and started performing. The clapback wasn't just discussed, it was reenacted, remixed, and repackaged like it was a viral sound waiting for choreography. People weren't asking whether the original insult was out of line anymore. That question got buried fast. The new obsession became Karlissa's tone, her delivery, and whether she was doing too much. Which is internet code for you weren't quiet enough for my comfort. Memes exploded everywhere. Screenshots of Karlissa's words were cropped, zoomed, and paired with reaction gifs that exaggerated every syllable. Some memes celebrated her energy, framing her as the spokesperson for people tired of recycled disrespect. Others tried to mock her intensity, pretending passion is only acceptable when it's entertaining, not confrontational. Either way, the result was the same. The moment grew bigger than the insult that started it. Celebrity reactions slipped in. Sideways, never direct, always vague. No one named names, but everyone knew what was being referenced. Tweets about women being held to different standards popped up. Posts about confidence being mislabeled as chaos gained traction. A few influencers hinted that the backlash proved Karlissa's point without realizing they were agreeing with her while pretending to stay neutral. Silence, as usual. Chose a side by pretending it did and single quotes T. Nicki Minaj's name became the gravitational center of the debate, even though she wasn't the one speaking. Fans defended her fiercely, arguing that Karlissa's response was a necessary interruption to a narrative that's been allowed to repeat itself for years. They pointed out how male artists can yell, rant, and spiral publicly without being branded unstable, while women get reduced to punchlines the moment they stop smiling politely. Critics tried to flip the script. They claimed Karlissa was making the situation worse by responding at all. According to them, ignoring trolls is the only classy response, as if silence has ever stopped disrespect. That argument fell apart quickly when people realized the same trolls rarely get ignored when they go viral. Silence only works when the internet decides it does. The phrase hot mess became a lightning rod. People debated its intent like it was a philosophical term instead of a lazy insult. Some argued it was harmless slang. Others broke down how often it's weaponized against women to minimize success and complexity. Karlissa's clapback dragged that conversation into the spotlight whether people were ready for it or not. Blogs capitalized immediately. Headlines sharpened the narrative into something louder and more confrontational. Words like erupts, snaps, and goes off dominated timelines because calm doesn't trend. Context was trimmed, tone was exaggerated. Karlissa's response was framed as chaos instead of confrontation. Because framing matters more than facts in click culture, trolls didn't retreat, they reorganized. Some tried to bait Karlissa into further responses, hoping to provoke something they could clip out of context. Others pretended to be concerned, questioning her mental state in the same breath they claimed to care about respectful discourse. The hypocrisy was loud, and Karlissa didn't miss it. Supporters praised her refusal to soften. They argued that matching energy isn't instability, it's self-respect. They pointed out how often women are expected to absorb disrespect quietly to maintain likability. Karlissa's response challenged that expectation, and that's what made people uncomfortable. The conversation widened beyond Nicki Minaj entirely. It turned into a referendum on who gets to respond to disrespect and how. Is passion only acceptable when it's palatable? Is defense only valid when it's quiet? Karlissa didn't theorize these questions. She answered them by example. As the engagement climbed, so did the pressure. Every word Karlissa posted afterward was scrutinized. Every like, every reply, every silence became part of the narrative. That's the trap of going viral. You don't just respond once. You get monitored afterward. As if the internet is waiting for a misstep, neutral observers began picking sides without admitting it. They claimed they were tired of drama while actively engaging with every update. The internet loves to pretend. It hates chaos while feeding it non-stop. This situation was no different. What started as a clapback turned into a larger cultural argument about respect, tone policing, and who gets labeled unstable for speaking loudly. Karlissa's name trended alongside Nicki's, not because she sought attention, but because attention follows conflict like gravity, and just when it seemed like the conversation might plateau, it escalated again. A few high-profile accounts amplified the exchange, either defending Karlissa or criticizing her, pulling even more eyes into the situation. Once that happens, there's no shrinking the moment back down. The original insult was almost forgotten at this point. That's the irony. Trolls throw stones hoping for reaction. And when the reaction comes, they hide behind the chaos they created. Karlissa's response outgrew the insult, turning a throwaway comment into a cultural flashpoint. This phase wasn't about resolution. It was about amplification. About how quickly a single response can spiral into a full-scale internet debate with no off switch. And the most dangerous part was still ahead. Because when conversations shift from jokes to judgment, from memes to moral debates, the fallout stops being funny. It becomes personal. When the memes finally slowed and the engagement stopped climbing every second, that's when the situation stopped being entertaining and started being expensive. Not in money alone, but in energy, perception, and relationships. The clapback didn't disappear. It settled. And once something settles online, it becomes part of the permanent record whether anyone agrees with it or not. Karlissa didn't need to say another word for the aftershocks to keep moving. The internet had already decided this moment meant something bigger than the original insult. Every feature post, every casual comment, every interaction was now filtered through the lens of that response. That's the hidden cost of going viral. For confrontation, you don't just respond once, you inherit a narrative. Supporters framed the outcome as a win. To them, Karlissa stood her ground, called out tired disrespect, and refused to shrink herself for internet comfort. They saw the clapback as a reminder that trolls don't get to throw stones without consequences. For this group, the aftermath wasn't fallout. It was proof that matching energy works when silence has failed for years. Critics saw it differently. They argued the response prolonged the drama, claiming the clapback gave trolls exactly what they wanted. According to them, ignoring disrespect is the only mature option, a claim that sounds noble until you realize it almost always benefits the people doing the disrespecting. The argument shifted from what was said to how it was said, which is always where conversations land when the original critique can't be defended. Nicki Minaj's name continued to hover over everything like a shadow. Even without speaking, she remained the center of gravity. Fans interpreted Karlissa's defense as loyalty. Detractors framed it as unnecessary involvement. What got lost was the reality that Nicki's reputation has been shaped for years by the same language trolls casually recycle. The clapback didn't create that narrative. It interrupted it. Behind the scenes, people started moving differently. That's the part nobody screenshots. Conversations got more cautious. Group chats went quiet. People thought twice before commenting publicly, not because they changed their opinions, but because they saw how quickly words can come back with interest. When clapbacks go viral, they don't just affect the target, they spook the audience. The blogs kept circling the story even after there was nothing new to report. Aftermath, fans still divided. Backlash continues. Same screenshots, new angles. Repetition made the moment feel ongoing even as real-time activity slowed. That's how narratives stay alive online. Not through new information, but through constant reframing. What became increasingly uncomfortable was how the conversation drifted away from accountability and toward character judgment. People weren't debating the insult anymore. They were debating Karlissa herself, her tone, her personality, her right to respond the way she did. That shift revealed the real issue. The internet is far more comfortable policing reactions than addressing provocation. Karlissa's refusal to soften her stance unsettled people who rely on performative politeness as a shield. She didn't apologize for being sharp. She didn't repackage her message to be more digestible. That consistency earned respect from supporters and irritation from critics, which usually means the message landed exactly where it needed to. The trolls who started it all mostly disappeared. That's how it always goes. Once the spotlight turns harsh, instigators retreat into anonymity and let others argue about the wreckage. The insult that began the storm barely mattered anymore. It had served its purpose. It provoked a response, and the response outgrew it. Public interest matured into something heavier than jokes. The laughs faded. The memes lost their bite. What replaced them was reflection, even from people who didn't want to admit it. when audiences start questioning whether something went too far. That's when a moment crosses from entertainment into consequence. Industry observers didn't need to weigh in publicly. They rarely do, they just recalibrate. When someone shows they're willing to speak loudly, it changes how others engage with them. Sometimes that earns respect, sometimes it creates distance. Often it does both at once. That ambiguity is the real aftermath. The discourse also exposed how differently women are treated when they respond to disrespect. The same intensity celebrated in one context gets condemned in another. The same confidence praised in silence gets labeled chaos when it's voiced. Karlissa didn't theorize this. She demonstrated it live, and the internet reacted exactly the way history says it would. As days passed, the story drifted off the trending page but stayed bookmarked in collective memory. Anytime Nicki Minaj trended, the clapback resurfaced. In comments, anytime Karlissa posted, people referenced it. That's the thing about moments like this. They don't end, they attach. What lingered wasn't anger, it was awareness. The reminder that words aren't harmless just because they're common, that labels carry history, that reactions don't exist in a vacuum, and that sometimes pushing back loudly is the only way to stop the same tired narratives from looping endlessly. The internet moved on, because it always does. Another argument replaced this one. Another scandal took center stage, but the ripple stayed in how people talked, in how they hesitated, in how they chose their words a little more carefully, at least for a while. And that's the final truth of this moment. A throwaway insult tried to pass unnoticed. A clapback refused to let it. And once that line was crossed, the conversation could never return to where it started. Now, if you're still here, don't play innocent. You didn't just watch this, you felt it. You formed an opinion halfway through, changed it twice, and now you're itching to say what everyone else is scared to type. So go ahead and smash that like button like it personally annoyed you. Because the algorithm only understands passion when it's aggressive. Drop a comment and say it with your chest. Was Karlissa right to clap back and shut the nonsense down? Or do you think she gave trolls exactly what they wanted? Is calling a woman a hot mess still supposed to be funny in 2026? Or is that just recycled disrespect dressed up as an opinion? Don't be vague. Pick a side. Argue it. The comment section is already a battlefield. You might as well step into it. And if you're not subscribed yet, that's questionable behavior. You already know how this goes. Today, it's a clapback. Tomorrow, it's a deleted post, a subtweet, or someone addressing the situation while saying absolutely nothing. While other channels play safe and tiptoe around the drama, we break down the real patterns behind the chaos. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next moment when the internet pretends it's shocked all over again. Turn on notifications too, because scandals don't drop on schedules. They pop up late at night. When someone gets tired of holding their tongue and decides peace was overrated. When that happens, you'll want to already be here instead of catching up in the comments like everyone else. Because let's be honest, this story isn't over. It never is. Online drama doesn't end. It just pauses until someone says one wrong sentence. Welcome to Fame Flaws, where confidence gets called chaos. Clapbacks become headlines. And the truth is always louder than the trolls.